the Healing Through Love podcast with Sharlene Lynch and Rose Davidson. In episode 112, discover how Duncan Bhaskaran Brown quit alcohol to save his marriage and find a better life. Learn how love was the key to his sobriety.
That means, as a result, on average, a man will drink 19.6 litres of pure alcohol a week, which is about 3.5 bottles of wine, which is unquestionably far too much. So that's why men, on average, have 2 to 3 times more. They're 2 to 3 times more likely to develop a problem with drinking. So we are, without doubt, more likely to have a problem with alcohol, but we're less likely to ask for help, just because we're blokes and we don't like doing that. But also, the statistics are fairly clear. Men are less likely to go to rehab than women, despite the fact they're more likely to have a problem. So, it's kind of this double whammy. And there are a lot of amazing women in the sober sphere doing a lot of really amazing work, and I respect them and I love their work, and it really resonates with me now. But when I was drinking, if you'd started talking about drinking white wine before you go and pick the kids up from school, it wouldn't have really resonated with me.
Welcome to another episode of Healing Through Love. Each week, we share ideas, experiences, and resources to increase the awareness of domestic and family violence and to empower survivors to grow and thrive. We talk with experts who share their advice, or with people who have experienced abuse, no matter where they are on their journey. This is all about healing through love. And now, here are your hosts, Sharlene Lynch and Rose Davidson.
Hello and welcome to the Healing Through Love podcast, a space where stories of strength, resilience and transformation unfold. I'm your host, Sharlene Lynch, and I'm honoured to be your guide on this journey of empowerment and healing. Today we have a very special episode tailored just for you, whether you're driving the car, sipping a cup of tea, or simply taking a moment to yourself. We want you to know that you're in a safe place. Healing Through Love is more than a podcast. It's a community, a beacon of hope, a reminder that you're not alone. In this episode, we have a guest who'll share a story that resonates at the core of our mission, a story that illuminates the power of love, resilience, and unwavering strength that lies within each and every one of us. So settle in. Take a deep breath and let the healing journey begin. But before we dive into today's narrative, just a quick reminder that if you find value in our episodes, consider supporting us by subscribing and sharing and leaving a review. Your engagement helps us reach the hearts and spread the message of healing through love. Today we've got a fantastic guest, and some people say that Duncan can help you go beyond alcohol. But it's not just about that. Duncan will help you increase your energy, your power, your productivity, and improve your relationships and enjoy the heck out of life. Hello and welcome to the stage, Duncan. How are you?
I'm good. I'm looking forward to having a bit of a chat.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So behind this is obviously a story. Are you in a place where you can dive in and tell us your personal narrative that created how you got where you are?
Yeah. So it's been 9 years since I stopped drinking. So look, I haven't reached supreme enlightenment yet, but I think I have got to a place where the wounds are healed.
So now, was there a moment in time? Was there an episode that got you to that place where you chose to stop drinking?
Yeah, so I started, like a lot of people, drinking when I was a teenager, and I thought all of my Christmases had come at once. It seemed to do so much for me. It seemed to kind of like help me be more confident, help me be funnier. It seemed to even make me better looking. I mean, maybe that wasn't entirely true, but that was what my adolescent mind thought. It seemed to give me so much. But as time went on, what I noticed was the amount of people that I was drinking with sort of went down. It became less and less of a social thing, but the amount that I was drinking went up and up and up. And yeah, in the end, I was pretty much on my own when I did most of my drinking. And I was just basically sitting on my own in my flat, drinking a couple of bottles of wine a night, which was not that much fun. And I think the thing that brought it to a head was my wife and I, we decided to start a family. We were doing all the adulty things, we had jobs, we had a place to live, we were very grown up. We did the cleaning and everything. So we thought, wow, you've got to do the most adulty thing, haven't you? You've got to start a family. And well, that was quite good fun. I mean, the trying bit was quite good fun. And when she got pregnant, we were just like all of those first time couples, just naive, happy. It was amazing until we walked out of this sort of scanning room after a nurse had told my wife that she was having a miscarriage, and then it all just fell apart. And it was incredibly hard for her, physically, emotionally, mentally. But I know now what made it worse was I just wasn't there for her. My reaction to anything that was stressful was to sort of just disappear into the bottle. It was the same reaction, whether it was hard times, hard emotions, difficult situations. I'd just pour myself into a bottle of wine, and I just pretty much left her on her own, which was, looking back, that was pretty rubbish. But what it did do, I think, was it sort of started me thinking, like I spent a couple of months sort of wrestling with this question, what am I for? What is the point of Duncan? What am I here to do? And I never, had one of those moments, 4 a.m., staring in the mirror, moodily lit kind of thing. And it never really crystallized itself into a single question. But what I understand now is that I was just asking myself one question over and over again, what do you want, Duncan? Do you want another drink? Or do you want a family?
Mm.
And the good news is I made the right decision. And almost 9 months to the day after I stopped drinking, our daughter was born. And, that was fantastic. It was wonderful. It actually gave me an entirely new set of problems, but good problems.
I love it. Okay, so as a recovered alcoholic myself, I get it. And interesting. So the 1st of August this year, so like almost a month from now, will be my 9th anniversary. So I get it.
Oh, wow.
We
almost did it together.
Almost. I'm curious, the 5Ds that they frequently talk about when we talk about addiction, how did they play out for you? And for our listeners today, the 5Ds are delay, distract, drink water, deep breathe, and discuss. So did you use the 5D process? Is it something that you talk about? I'm just curious, as a survivor, as a sober woman myself now.
That's not something I particularly use, although all of the stuff that you just mentioned, fantastic idea. And in fact, like yourself, I stopped drinking before all of this alcohol-free nonsense started. And like, at the moment, I don't drink a lot of alcohol-free alcohol products. I mean, obviously you do drink a lot of alcohol-free drinks because water's an alcohol-free drink, isn't it? But I think I'm kind of lucky because I think I watched too many Perrier adverts when I was a kid. And I think that sparkling water is just the most sophisticated thing in the world. So, that made it quite lucky for me that when I went out, I was perfectly happy drinking sparkling water. And I actually do drink an awful lot of water. Look, I can even prove it. Look, got some here.
I love it. Okay. Yes, drinking water is a great way to delay.
So drinking water, absolutely, very, very important. Breathing, I try to do it every day. That's so. Yeah, but no, absolutely. It's very much part of the yoga I do is all about the breathing. In fact, a lot of the exercises I do focus more on the breath and the weights. So it all sounds like important stuff. Distraction, that was another one, wasn't it?
Yes,
definitely. I think the problem when you're drinking is you are doing something that isn't good for you, and you've got to stop doing that. And what I find is that people then find themselves on this kind of like knife edge, I suppose, and they tend to go one of two ways. What happened for me was I went, oh man, I've got all this time. This is amazing. I can get round to doing all of those things that I've been putting off for ages. Whereas I've met plenty of people who go, oh, Duncan, it's terrible. I've got all this time. I'm so bored. What do I do? So, some people are naturally a little bit kind of, I don't know, find it easier to fill that gap, but for other people it can be a real issue, and that's why I'm a big fan of a guy called Ted Perkins who wrote a couple of books about how films can help you get sober, and specifically just because he found he had all of this time, so he just watched the entirety of Netflix back catalogue, which
I love it. Now, you espouse the process in and around breath work and energy work and frequency and yoga and everything all of that brings. So, how were you like this before you gave up drinking, or has this happened all since you've become sober?
So I would say that I've always been fairly open-minded. I read Hamlet when I was doing A-level English, so like high school age. And that line, there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophies, that always, resonated with me. And then I end up having arguments with my wife because she reminds me that that's one of my favorite quotes. And I say, yes, but that doesn't mean any old nonsense is true. But, I've always been fairly open-minded. I've always been kind of reasonably aware of the fact that throughout history, humanity has always believed a bunch of stuff, and a lot of that stuff then ends up being kind of dropped to one side and forgotten about, and often laughed at. Which means, unless you're prepared to really, really go deeply into your own ego, you've got to admit that a lot of what we talk about and a lot of what we think now, in 200 years, people are going to laugh at us.
Yeah. I think
so.
It would be great to have dialed back 200 years and just heard the conversations of yesteryear. And absolutely, let's dial it forward and see what happens moving forward. I love it. So now you've distilled all of this knowledge, and you have you're now actively making a difference for people. And one of the ways that you're doing that is that you've written several books. Can you talk to some of the books that you've written?
Yeah, so the first one I wrote was called Get Over Indulgence, and it is a sort of fairly easy to read, short, interesting, fun kind of just a account of my journey. So it's how I went from, eating badly, smoking, drinking, just generally being miserable with my life to peace and joy and happiness and freedom and all of the good stuff. And I don't want to spoil it for people by saying that there is some educational content in there. It is mostly just an entertaining read. And one of the things that I'm most happy about is I get people telling me they read it in an afternoon, which I think is one of the best compliments you can get as a writer. There is a little bit about how I did it. So it's sort of like the journey of my learning, a self-help novella, I suppose. That was the first one.
Yeah. Yeah. If you had to distill that, what would be the turning point? Because there's always this kairos moment for people, that moment within a moment where, true change happens. Yes, we can increase our level of awareness. We can do some reading. We can get connected and realize that the things that we're doing on a daily basis are not serving our bodies, our minds, our souls. But is there a moment in time that helped you switch and change? Yes, you've spoken about your wife and losing the baby, the miscarriage. But was there something that made you go from where you are to where you are now?
Yeah, I think it was pretty much connecting it, wasn't it? Rather than just knowing it, actually feeling it, and just getting sort of further down and, realizing that at this very deep level, I had for years and years believed that alcohol helped me to handle stress. And then that moment when, it sort of clicked, and I didn't just know it, I kind of felt it. I really, right down at the core of my being, I just felt that, it was the stress. It wasn't helping me deal with the stress. It was the stress.
It is so true. So alcohol, listeners, is a depressant. And interestingly, it's the solution that we take when we're depressed. So it's the gift that keeps giving, because we're taking it to recover from the depression, but in fact, it's actually a depressant itself. And then also with the extra sugars and everything, it's also going to carry your extra weight as well with that sugar fix. Isn't it fascinating? I wonder what else in our life we're attempting to fix up, and that's actually the problem. I'd love to have all of those answers. Now, you've written another book as well. Can you talk to me about Real Men Quit?
Yeah, so folks, we're a bit rubbish, aren't we? And we've got two problems in life. Well, we've got a few more than two problems, but in particular, we've got two problems. One is that we drink more than women. So if you look at the World Health Organization statistics, if we went to a bar and there were 4 drinks on the bar, I would have to drink 3 of them and you would have to drink 1 of them, which you might push back at, but that's just 75% of the alcohol worldwide is consumed by men, and that means, as a result, on average, a man will drink 19.6 liters of pure alcohol a week, which is about 3.5 bottles of wine, which is unquestionably far too much. So that's why men, on average, have 2 to 3 times more. They're 2 to 3 times more likely to develop a problem with drinking. So we are, without doubt, more likely to have a problem with alcohol, but we're less likely to ask for help, just because we're blokes and we don't like doing that. But also, the statistics are fairly clear. Men are less likely to go to rehab than women, despite the fact they're more likely to have a problem. So, it's kind of this double whammy. And there are a lot of amazing women in the sober sphere doing a lot of really amazing work, and I respect them and I love their work, and it really resonates with me now. But when I was drinking, if you'd started talking about drinking white wine before you go and pick the kids up from school, it wouldn't have really resonated with me. And that was why I wanted to write something that was specifically for men. And yeah, so I just wrote a lot about sport and Star Wars and really, really, really bad jokes. So it's an attempt to meet people. Well, it's an attempt to meet men where they are, and kind of help them, because they're not going to ask for help. They're unlikely to go and see a therapist, but even men, use Amazons. So even men, after having a drink or two, can spell the words real men and quit. So there's hope for us.
I love it. I love it. Look, they do say if you can get your book title to under 4 words, you've got a winner. And if you can make it into a sentence that people can easily remember, you've got a bestseller. I love it. Well, isn't it fascinating is that I drank 5 bottles of red wine a day, and I'm a woman. So I think that here in Australia, culturally it's accepted, and women start drinking at teenagers, really. The drinks are fashioned towards teenagers. The taste is, the look of them, and not so much the advertising now, because we're very, very careful about the advertising, but they very carefully sponsor the events where teenagers are likely to be. So we've still got a long way to go in Australia. And I was looking at some cards the other day. Every congratulations cards, even the birthday cards, they all had alcohol in them. So it's like inculcated into our behaviors. And, you sit down to any restaurant and there's 4 different wine glasses. So we've got a long way to go to change the way we have this level of expectation about drinking and not drinking. But I love the fact that you talk about that stopping drinking, becoming sober, saved your marriage. So I just love you to talk about that from a gentleman's perspective. How did you giving up alcohol save your marriage?
Look, I'm amazed that she stayed with me as long as she did, because like I said, when I was talking about the miscarriage, the whole thing was I was just not there for her when she needed it. And I think, you've probably come across the idea that you don't emotionally develop whilst you're drinking, which I often use as a way of pretending I'm still in my 20s. It kind of, I think there's some truth in that I didn't really learn how to deal with proper adult grown-up relationships until I stopped drinking. Luckily, that sobriety gave me quite a good platform, and then I built on it. And I am not perfect. I mean, if my wife was listening, I'm sure she would be phoning in to point out all of the stuff that I still get wrong, because I don't, I'm not the finished article by any stretch of the imagination. But there's one thing in particular that I think I realized a few years ago that I never would have realized when I was drinking, because I just didn't have the, self-awareness, or let alone the awareness of what was going on around me. And that's that, when she wants to talk, she says, "Oh, I've got a problem." And I always used to go, "Right, let's put up some shelves," because that's sort of our default response as blokes, isn't it? We want to actually do something. We think if there's a problem, we'll take an action, and that will solve the problem. And if actually there are too many books lying around on the floor, then putting up some shelves might solve the problem. But what I've come to realize is that often she doesn't want the solution. She wants to define the problem as much as anything else. Ultimately, she doesn't want shelves. She wants a hug, doesn't she? She just wants me to sit down and give her a hug and tell her she's brilliant and that it'll all be all right, and listen to her, push out the parameters of the problem, so that in her own mind, she can work out what the solution is. And if that happens to be shelves, like, bingo, I'm your man. But it might not be shelves. It might just be, take some of your books to the charity shop, Duncan.
I love it. I love it. So I love the reference that you talk about sobriety and love, and the connection between sobriety and love. And being as a woman now that's sober almost 9 years, I'd love to know. I'd love you to dive in deep and explain the connection between love and sobriety.
Well, I mean, Johann Hari, who we all love, in his TED Talk and later in his book, Chasing the Scream, he sort of outlined this idea that the opposite of addiction is not abstinence. The opposite of addiction is connection. And I think that's very, very powerful.
It's the truth. That's all there is. It is the truth.
Yeah. So it is the truth, but I'm not entirely convinced it's all there is. I always think you need to expand on that a little bit, because I think a lot of people sort of jump to the idea that by connection, what he means is connection with other people. And that is absolutely important. But I think there is a whole other world of connections that you can talk about. Yeah, absolutely. Connection with yourself being the most important one. And when you're talking about relationships, I think you really do have to start with yourself. I think your relationships are merely a reflection of how you see yourself. So if you are poisoning yourself and you are miserable and you are full of self-hate, then it does seem unlikely that you are going to have fruitful, loving, harmonious, empathetic relationships. So for me, as much as anything, the sobriety has been that platform to build self-awareness and to build some compassion and some love for myself, which has made it a lot easier then to go out and give that compassion and that love to other people in the world. And, not just my wife, or everybody I meet, I try and meet them with compassion and love.
I love that. I love that. It is all about that conscious connection. Now, before I ask you the final question, where's the best place for people to connect with you?
So I'd love to offer your listeners a bit of a gift. So if they'd like to check out Get Over Indulgence, then they can download it as a PDF or the Kindle version, or, if they can stand to listen to me for 3 hours and 45 minutes, they can even listen to the audiobook. I'll apologize for the silly voices now. So to get that, all you need to do is put getover.uk into the internet. That's getover.uk. That'll take you to a bit of my website. You can download the book there. But it's also my website, so you can find out a little bit about what I do, who I am, and I'm very busy on the socials. So LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. You can always find me there. I'm always happy to chat about this stuff. But the best thing to do is just put getover.uk into your search engine of choice and grab yourself a copy of the book.
I love that. And listeners, the links will be in the show notes and in the show description, so you don't have to look very far. Just look there and you will find them. I love it. Now, our final question to you today, Duncan, before we go is, what words of wisdom would you share with our listeners?
You are enough. You don't need alcohol. You don't need cigarettes. You don't need junk food. You don't need social media. You don't need online games, pornography, or Netflix, because you are enough. You have absolutely everything inside you that you need to live a happy, fulfilling, loving life. So, just get that tattooed on your heart. You are enough.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And that is look, we must be related on some level, because that is my catch cry as well, is that you've got this. The answer is inside of you. You were born this way. You just need to get it out. I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for this.
And we are related. We got sober at the same time, which means we probably started drinking at about the same time, which probably means we went to some of the same parties.
You're hilarious. So first of all, I really would like to point out, Duncan, I'm 57. You are considerably younger than I am. I started earlier. I live in a different country than you do. You're in the UK and I'm in Australia. I love it.
I did do a bit of partying in Australia in my time.
And I did do some partying in the UK in my time.
There we go. Look, we went to the same parties. It's fine.
Party. I love it. It's been a privilege and a pleasure to share this opportunity to just dive in and expand on the fact that we are enough and that we don't need these addictions in all of their shapes and forms, and to talk about your two amazing books and your beautiful offer that our listeners can get that version for free and listen to it. That's amazing. Listen to it, or they can actually read it, whatever they prefer. And we've established that it can be read in an afternoon. Thank you so much for spending this quality time with us today at Healing Through Love. If you're listening today and you would like to pay it forward for survivors of domestic and family violence, we have an opportunity for you to sponsor our next event. We're also offering Pamper Days, which looks like day spas on steroids in your local neighbourhood. As of 2023, Healing Through Love went global, and we now offer Pamper Days in every country in the world. We would love to have you as a guest or as a practitioner lean in and ask Healing Through Love how you can get involved in our global movement to raise the frequency of this planet. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Healing Through Love. You can get further resources, see the show notes, or simply reach out to us via our website at htlaustralia.org. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to your company next time on the Healing Through Love podcast.